Hello everyone, welcome to Internally Screening. My name's Adam.
My name's Rupert.
And today we're back with the Best Picture podcast. We are covering today The Silence of the Lambs, the immortal 1991 horror film classic, horror thriller classic, with one of the greatest villain performances, one of the most famous villain performances of all time. And later we will be talking about The Sound of Music, two films that seem destined to be paired up with one another, but with this format we have basically been spinning a wheel at the end of each podcast to determine which will be the next Best Picture winner that we talk about. We're doing two per podcast, but last time an eagle-eyed viewer, a well-informed viewer may be aware that the pianist, despite being covered in our debut episode of this new format, isn't actually a Best Picture winner. So we can only humbly apologise for this misstep. It's the kind of quality control that you can
I'm
get
not apologising for the record. I have if you're annoyed about that, okay, you got to sort out your priorities.
I know, I just feel that, we set out with a new series, a new goal.
Yeah, we fucked it up immediately. That's our style.
And we stumbled straight out of the gate. Now, we are going to spend this episode clambering back to our feet. I made sure that these two were, in fact, winners of recipients of this award.
So if you expect me to do the bare minimum research, you're barking up the wrong tree. Look, we'll be real. We got that list from some place, some website, and
they
said
lied
that it
to
won.
us.
Yeah,
yes,
so it is what it is.
Subsequently, we've gone back and made our own list because the internet cannot be trusted. Here we are. And without further ado, we're going to talk about The Silence of the Lambs. And you are going to have to take our opinion for granted because, we've proven ourselves to be consummate professionals. And now we are going to, rattle off some completely correct opinion/facts.
That's all I deal in, mate.
About this great horror film. Today, these two films are basically, there's no chance in hell you haven't heard of these two. Without too much fanfare, I'll just pass it straight to you, Rupert. What do you think about Silence of the Lambs?
Well, I guess the really significant fact about this film is it's the only horror film to have ever won Best Picture.
Yes.
Pretty much.
That's a huge one.
Obviously I imagine Alien might have cut it close, but I don't even know if it was even nominated in the end. There are loads of big snubs of the past you could probably think of. Tons of of the classic French ones like Le Diabolique, or even The Thing. Probably didn't even get
The Thing was hated.
Yeah, exactly. Time, yeah. So there's tons of classic horror, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Easily
could have been nominated in a just world, but the Oscars has a habit of just overlooking great genre films. Even classy ones, like the French ones I was talking about earlier, like Le Diabolique or Eyes Without a Face or something like that. So you normally have to go to Europe, like Cannes or something, to see that stuff win anything.
Yeah,
but The Silence of the Lambs is an instance of every star aligning, making a horror film so good that all of the dusty Oscar voters could finally just say okay, yeah, this is fucking awesome. And yeah, I guess this was possibly one of the first horror films I ever watched as well, and I've seen it quite a few times just because it's almost infinitely rewatchable. It's such a well-made film. Jonathan Demme, who directed it, has barely made anything except this Philadelphia and the Talking Heads documentary.
Oh, okay.
Which I've seen bits and pieces of, and I haven't seen Philadelphia. So this is really, he wasn't a prolific director by any means.
Not
but
at all.
I guess if you were to come out, make this film, The Silence of the Lambs, and just call it quits, I think that's completely fair. Yeah, because
one and done.
It is, just one. It's one of the best horror films, but it kind of feels wrong calling it a horror film because it's almost more of a, procedural drama in many ways.
Yeah, it definitely straddles the line between horror and thriller.
It has horrific elements.
Yeah, I think that is the main thing. That there is a perhaps a slight psychological horror aspect to it with the way
a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, I guess it more follows along the lines of a David Fincher thriller, like a Seven type film, where it's that again. That's a film that straddles the line between horror and thriller.
Sure,
but it is kind of more thriller.
Seven feels a little bit slightly more horror to me, just because it's so grungy and filthy. Whereas this one, its style is actually quite subtle. So I don't know, visually it's quite sort of matter of fact, but there's one kind of really consistent motif throughout the film, which is like the idea of perspective. So like there's the really famous scene where she goes into the police station in the local thing where they find the body.
Yeah.
And then like she comes in and the camera, without sort of telling you right away or like telegraphing it basically, it's like becomes her POV and you can see all the like men looking at her.
Oh, yes.
And that's kind of like a motif throughout the film. Again, there's a brilliant video you can watch on YouTube by Every Frame a Painter, who does a great breakdown of the cinematography and the first interaction between Clarice and Hannibal, where it's sort of breaking down how the power dynamics are communicated in this kind of shot reverse shot way, where how she's centered varies based on the power dynamic. And it's so precise like that, and you obviously don't notice it watching it, but your brain will notice it. When having seen that video and then watching it as we did the other day, it was like.
It refreshed it in your brain. It kind of made a power.
Because I forgot I'd even seen the video.
Yeah.
And then I was watching. I was like, oh yeah, look, this is it.
Yeah.
And I love how that whole theme of perspective in the film visually pays off with that final scene where you have a POV shot.
Yeah.
But instead of people looking at Clarice, which has been the sort of motif throughout, so like there's that bit where like I said, she's in the police station and everyone's looking at her, and then she has that sort of flashback to her father's death funeral scene, and then in that final scene you have someone looking at her, but she seems helpless, but then she sort of like turns it back on them.
Right.
Which I just think,
that's interesting. I hadn't thought about
that's just how I read that.
Oh no, that's clever.
Bit,
I hadn't really thought of that. So in each previous instance where the POV is from her looking at everyone kind of surrounding her, towering over her, domineering, even if that's not how the character interprets it, like she still has a strength and a defiance to her, there's like a knowledge of her own kind of
like the
weakness
subtle
or like the power dynamic in that situation is against her pure, like largely because
like that really like subtle, like it's not like outright misogyny, but the way like she shows up at the local police station, she comes in and all the men are just looking at her like,
who the fuck is this? Yeah. There's not that instant kind of recognition of authority.
Exactly.
So by the end, in spite of her now being the observed rather than the observer, she then takes agency over a man in order to to survive beyond anything else. I like that.
You could probably read that final scene, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a cool idea for a scene. It's like this person has night vision, the other person doesn't.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really examined that scene in any greater depth than just
you don't need anything.
It's a tense scene, and the murderer is just playing with her. Yeah, and it's really visually interesting.
Yeah. Like for me, when before I'd sort of watched it multiple times and thought about like what the camera was doing and all this kind of stuff, because I've seen this film maybe like 5 times because I've watched it with my brothers. I watched it like for the first time ever when I was in uni. Watching it those first few times, that final scene was just like, oh, this is such a great like tense payoff for like a great film.
Yeah,
but with like the repeated watches, the whole thing comes together.
It kind of unlocks more and more as you go along. I mean, the big thing with this film, I think a huge element of what put it on the map and has made it as long-lasting as it is Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal. Now, that's not to take anything away from Jonathan Demme's direction or indeed Jodie Foster, any of the other actors
I think
involved.
It's actually the two of them.
Yeah? The dynamic they share. I think that's fair as well. But I think people love a good villain. The moment Anthony Hopkins did this performance, it was parodied to within an inch of its life.
Yeah, I mean, it's so iconic.
Yeah, but it bears repeating that he is unbelievably good in this film, because not only did this film win Best Picture, but he also won Best Actor, which I believe is one of the lowest amounts of screen time that someone has won Best Actor for. Yeah,
beaten only by Judi Dench in, Best Actor, yes, but lowest amount of time for a Best Actor or Actress is Judi Dench in Shakespeare in Love.
Which is ridiculous.
Which, when we get to that, you will see why, unless you've already seen it.
I can barely remember it.
If you can't
remember. Is she actually good in it?
No.
Oh, okay.
She shows up, and the crime you have to remember with that one is it came out the year Saving Private Ryan did, but we'll get
absolute
to that
ridiculousness.
Another day.
But if anything,
because we won't be covering Saving Private Ryan on this podcast.
No, that's true. Tangentially, I would like to say that a big part in my mind at least, in doing this specific series and this topic, is to talk about Shakespeare in love. And it's just that in my mind is such a like perfect example of when the Academy doesn't get it right. And they I don't know, they go for something wishy-washy and that celebrates art rather than, I don't know, it's a film about film.
Self-masturbation.
Yes, exactly. But, you know, today is not one of those days. Today is one of those days where they did get it right.
Yeah.
Largely. So...
with the actor nomination as well. 'Cause, I mean, I don't know if... The novels were popular, I know that, very popular.
Well, there was already another lesser-known adaptation before this called Manhunter, wasn't it?
Yes, but it was like an unlicensed version.
Right.
Where they didn't... It was like pretty much the same plot.
Because it was I believe it's the plot of Red Dragon.
I saw it ages ago. It's directed by...
Is it William Peterson?
No, it's directed by...
Was William Peterson?
Michael Mann.
Oh, Michael Mann. And William Peterson's in it, is he not?
Yeah, he is,
along with Brian Cox as Hannibal, which I'm deeply interested to see, because me, along with a lot of other people, have a newfound appreciation for Brian Cox thanks to Succession.
But I mean, like, what I was going to say is, I don't think Hannibal is as popular as a character without Anthony Hopkins. The two are basically you're unable to divorce them at this point. Right. And to be honest, he's so he's so good in this that it's actually testament to how good Mads Mikkelsen is in what's it called, Hannibal. In Hannibal, yeah. Like the way Anthony Hopkins is in this is just so specific. You can't really recreate it.
No.
So the reason why the show Hannibal works, I think, is because Mads Mikkelsen does such a different spin on the character. Because I mean, you can watch the sequels to this, like they basically rely so heavily on Anthony Hopkins to carry it, and it
doesn't really work. I mean, Red Dragon has its highlights, but it has nothing. I think that it gives a lot of credence to what you were saying about the chemistry between him and Jodie Foster, because him and Edward Norton, him and Julianne Moore. I like...
because Red Dragon's good, but the Ed Norton relationship just isn't compelling in the way it is with
it's
Clarice.
A lot more hollow.
Like, think about the scene where, with the sort of, with Clarice talking about, like, you know, when she tried to escape her uncle's farm, and you have that whole scene.
Great.
Yeah, like, there's no moment... even though I think Red Dragon's, like, a solid film, and I actually really like it in a lot of ways, it doesn't ever have that moment with Ed Norton and Hannibal, or anything even close to it.
No, nothing close to that. I think that's something that this film does brilliantly well, is that you have obviously your classic sort of thriller / horror high points in terms of like the building of tension. Like you get your kind of spooky scenes, you get Hannibal breaking free, you get she puts the lotion on its skin scene. But when the film is quiet, when the film is a far slower pace, those scenes between Clarice and Hannibal maintain the life, the sort of the pulse of the film in such like a thrilling way. You are as engaged, if not even more so, by these quiet conversations as you are with like the releases of tension that kind of climax at the end. Having that balance has helped maintain the film's legacy, because there's never really a lull or a dull moment.
It's just not boring. It's just, like you say, it's because it's so well written and really sort of choppily paced. I've actually read the novel, though I can't really remember it very well. It basically just like goes through all of the interesting bits, which is, I mean, it sounds simple like that, but that's kind of the best way to I don't know what the fine art is in adaptation, obviously, because I've never written an adaptation for a screenplay, but like all of the most exciting and most like engaging parts of the novel, they're all executed kind of exactly as I remembered reading.
Right, it's
like in a way that if I ever reread the book, it's just I'm basically just going to be seeing the film in my head at this point. Like, it's such a good adaptation, and I think the quiet moments are all great, but it also, I just think, when the big moments happen in this film, it's so great. Like the whole Hannibal escaping sequence is just like.
It's immaculate.
It is so good. It's kind of silly, but like watching it, it's just like
it's 5D chess. Like when you kind of know,
it's so satisfying.
When you know what's happening on a subsequent watch, I guess there's a kind of goofiness to it, because you're like, oh, how is he pulling this off? But the reveal on your first watch,
I remember the first time seeing it, I was
go,
like,
no
what?
fucking way. That's crazy.
Because it's great to be tricked by Hannibal. So it almost sort of sucks to rewatch it and be like, oh, I know what he's up to. I wish I could go back and like...
Yeah, I guess what you then do is you kind of examine the subtleties in his moves building up to that point.
Yeah.
Where he's, doing little subtle hand movements, like sort of adjusting things. So there's more.
It does have loads of great detail like that. Like every single cut or close up is like completely purposeful. And if you know what happens in the scene, you can pick up on it much easier.
Which is quite amazing, given that Jonathan Demme is so inexperienced comparatively as a director, that he had that kind of craft and ability within him.
Well, I don't know. He might have done. I don't know. Maybe he was directing adverts or something. Whatever
maybe.
It was.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
every shot of this can of Coke is purposeful.
It has to be done exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I don't really have any major criticisms of this film. I have it rated as a 9 out of 10, and I'm not sure why. I guess
there's a certain plainness, as we were saying before, in terms of the.
I don't really mind the plainness. I actually really like the plainness. I think the only thing this film lacks is the actual core villain of the film in Buffalo Bill. Whilst I like the appearance and the performance by the actor who I can't remember the name of, and I get the thematic, obviously the whole cocoon into a butterfly.
Yeah.
It's like the most obvious thing, right? And it relates to Clarice and how she.
Yes,
it's a very clear metaphor. So I get like all of that, and the character itself I don't mind. But they're a bit of a non-presence throughout the film.
It's quite hollow, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and you don't really notice it, I think, watching the film because you're so engaged with the Hannibal Clarice storyline.
Right.
But once the film kind of resolves, I guess that final scene, which I'm talking about with the night goggles and that, whilst that's really engaging, it does feel once the film's over, like, oh, that felt like a bit of an afterthought in retrospect.
Oh, interesting. I wouldn't have said that. I guess what I would have said is the first watch, you kind of got the procedural element, so the kind of not knowing what you're dealing with makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because who the villain is the mystery. And so having that kind of the secondary villain of Hannibal is not only necessary to advance the plot, but necessary to maintain a level of tension between sort of two characters on opposing sides. Because if they never meet the villain until the end, then there's a hollow quality in that resolution.
No, I understand that.
But I would say that still happens in the film regardless, and that on subsequent watches, you kind of yearn for just that little bit more contact or kind of establishment of the character beyond just other characters describing him, because the majority of what we get
the setup scene, right?
Yeah, what with the
where he kidnaps the
girl,
and you get like bits and pieces where it like cuts back to the girl being trapped, and him
and the scene where he's like, put the lotion on, that's fucking excellent.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's just like, I guess, I don't know how you'd fix it. I couldn't really propose.
It's a tough one. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, if you had to pick a flaw, it's there, but it doesn't by any means ruin the film for me, or even spoil the film slightly.
I mean, it's widely considered to be the most dated part by a lot of people because of the
transgender
stuff. Thing, which the film does kind of explicitly state at one point, where I think Clarice says, like, no, transsexuals are like, they don't generally commit.
They're not violent people.
Yeah, so this person, it's kind of established within the film that they're not actually.
Yeah, Hannibal says that Buffalo Bill wants to be transsexual as some kind of
like he wants
coping mechanism, essentially.
It basically says that he's not actually transgender. They use the word transsexual in the film, which I know is dated now as well. But so I guess the film itself kind of clears itself of that. I guess the one criticism which I do think kind of holds up is that the scene where he's like dancing. It's a kind of a great scene, I can't lie. It is so great. Just like him dancing to the Goodbye Horses song.
Oh, yes,
and he like tucks his dick between his legs and all of that. It's completely iconic. But it does kind of like the camera like really like hovers on like all of the gayest elements of him to like in a way where it's like supposed to make you feel gross. Like it zooms in on like his nipple ring, and it's like, do you know? Yeah, it kind of makes you feel like,
okay, I hadn't really thought of
which
that.
when you're watching it, I was like,
it's kind of othering him further than.
Yeah, like it's like look, he's got a nipple ring. That's gay.
Wasn't it bad enough him being a murderer? So yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
What's worse than a murderer? A gay murderer. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, I don't know if that was even intentional. And
it ultimately could just be sort of coincidental, I suppose.
I'm fortunate enough to not have to worry about these things because I've never been the victim of homophobia. So it didn't really bother me personally, but I can understand why it might bother someone else. But yeah, for me, it was still kind of ultimately, regardless of that, kind of one of the weaker elements of the film.
Okay.
But barely affects.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you have to pick a negative.
Exactly,
yeah, like I said, it's there, but it's not anything that really spoils the film to any major degree.
What would you rate it?
I'd give this film a 9 out of 10 as well. Sometimes it's a hard thing to put a finger on what separates a 9 and a 10. I think there's a certain level of emotional connection. I love lots of elements about this film, but like it doesn't touch my core in the way that, say, one of my favourite films, and indeed favourite horror films, is Cure, which we have talked about on many years ago. And that, on a technical level, is brilliant, but there's just like a certain extra little thing that just like wormed its way into the back of my brain that kind of fires some kind of strange
I get what you
dopamine.
mean, yeah.
And this doesn't quite have that, but on every other level, I can't help but praise this.
It's one of those films where it's a 9, but if someone told me it was a 10, I'm not going to highly debate them on it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean?
Yeah. I think it's a shame that Jodie Foster didn't get an award.
Oh, she did win Best Actress.
Oh, I'm going to have to amend that. Fuck, I can't believe I didn't realise.
She is amazing in this. And it kind of, I think it's a great example of like, if you have two great actors, you can just get that lightning in a bottle moment.
I think I've seen this like 3 times, and in my previous couple of watches, I had completely underestimated how crucial she is to the film. I was so focused on Anthony Hopkins. And this last time, I was like, how could I have ignored her in the way that I did?
It's a great character too. I love it's like the classic 90s girl boss, where it's like, it's just that little bit subtle, like where like characters like flirt with her and she's like, she has to like put them down, but she's not like overly like aggressive with like her, she's like very polite.
Right.
Like she's never really ever rude to anyone.
No.
She sort of has this cutesy aura, but she's also like so determined to just get the job done. She has to prove it to herself, which obviously is like part of her whole character psyche with her dead dad and all of that. So yeah, she is amazing in this for sure. So just as a note, the year that Silence of the Lambs won, it was the 64th Academy Awards, and the nominees were The Prince of Tides.
Fuck knows.
Same. JFK.
Okay.
Bugsy and Beauty and the Beast. Along with Silence of the Lambs. This ended up winning the big 5, which is Best Director, Best Film, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay. So yeah, I would have said out of those nominations, this is they got it right. I really like JFK as well, but
JFK is the only one that leaps out of me there that has any kind of competition, and it's definitely nowhere
it's
close.
A whole lot weirder than this film. I would have been shocked if JFK would have won, to be honest, because it's quite strange in comparison.
I get it's very conspiratorial,
but the whole way it's made is just insane. So like, I would have said. And Beauty and the Beast I haven't seen since I was a kid, and I haven't seen Bugsy or The Prince of Tides.
Well, it's interesting how those films. There's a few films that stood the test of time, but there's a couple in there that really kind of, regardless of quality, got kind of buried.
I've never heard of The Prince of Tides.
No.
I have heard of Bugsy.
I've heard of Bugsy, but not that version of it. I've just heard of Bugsy.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Are there any other films that came out that year that weren't nominated?
You've got Cape Fear, which is a pretty good film. You have Terminator 2. You had Barton Fink, which is a great film as well.
Need to see that. That's Coen Brothers, isn't it?
That is Coen Brothers. Naked Lunch is also a pretty good film.
That's never winning an Oscar.
But it's way too weird. Yeah. You had Robin Hood, The Prince of Thieves.
Oh.
Which was possibly gunning for one, to be honest, but probably ended up with more Razzies.
So, really, what I'm getting from this list is, apart from, say, Terminator 2, which would never have won anything anyway, just by the nature of it being a genre film, and such a genre film at that they basically did pick the best film of that year.
Yeah,
pretty much.
It's shocking to me that Terminator 2 wasn't nominated. That's a crime. Like, what the fuck is Bugsy doing in over?
Yeah, that's very true.
Like,
yeah,
Terminator
what the fuck?
2 is one of the best sequels of all time.
Yeah.
So that is shocking, and I guess James Cameron has only just become trendy again. Maybe he wasn't at the time. So
that maybe this is that was the reason Avatar and Avatar 2 have been nominated.
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. That came out.
Great film, but not an Oscar type film at all. I'm happy then that in 1992 the justice was done. They got it right, and not only was Silence of the Lambs the best of the nominated films, but it seems to me that it was the best of pretty much every film of the year.
Yeah.
But let us know down in the comments if you agree with that assessment. But we'll move on now to our next film.
Right, so the next film we're covering is 1965's The Sound of Music. You've possibly heard of this one before. It didn't win Cannes, I don't think. Although I could be completely wrong there. Maybe it did win Cannes. Maybe it was just so wholesome that even the French loved it. But I think we can all assume that that's not the case.
It doesn't have degenerate sexual deviancy or
not much
incest. So the French wouldn't have liked it.
No, that's true. It's far too American, if anything. It's directed by Robert Wise, who, having looked at his discography, his filmography, seemed to be a bit of a journeyman director who did everything from... He did West Side Story, which is obviously the other big musical of all time,
right.
I guess. And outside of that, The Haunting, which looks like a horror film, and one of the Star Trek movies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first Star Trek movie.
Oh, okay.
And the original, The Day the Earth Stood Still, which got remade with Keanu Reeves in it, if you remember that at all.
Yes.
But yeah, so The Sound of Music, I don't really know what the point of introducing it is at this point, but if you've been living under a rock, it's a musical set in Austria where a disobedient nun, played by Julie Andrews, gets sent out of the convent to go and look after some ill-behaved rich children, Austrian children, who are parented by Christopher Plummer, a very young, strapping Christopher Plummer. May he rest in peace. What an iconic actor.
Yeah, straight up.
It's very whimsical. It's very wholesome. It's got lots of singing and dancing in fields, and I thought I would have hated it. As an 18-year-old, I almost certainly would have not enjoyed it as much as I do now. But yeah, The Sound of Music. What do you think of The Sound of Music?
I think this, as you say, a film that a younger version of me would have found desperately uncool. The kind of antithesis of what I suppose defined my movie tastes early on. But, now that I've softened up a bit and I don't think I have to be like, I'm not allowed to like this thing. This is an impeccably well-made musical based off of Rodgers and Hammerstein's play,
it's like the play,
musical play, which in turn is based off the real-life story of the Von Trapp family singers.
Yeah.
The songwriting here is unbelievable. I think it was literally bar one song, every single song was a banger, like a memorable classic.
Yeah, and even that one song wasn't even that bad.
No, it's not a bad song. It's just a song that people didn't remember.
Yeah, exactly,
but every single song, and it was surprising me each time it happened. I was like, oh my god, this comes from this place as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes musicals kind of really pin themselves around one big hit. I remember when we saw Cats. Now, obviously, Cats is a dreadful film and a dreadful musical by all accounts as well. But that kind of has one big song.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah. And that's the kind of moment that people seem to sort of turn up for. And I think, generalizing in an area that I know fuck all about, but that seems to be a commonality in a lot of musicals. At the very least,
you get one banger.
You get one, maybe two bangers.
Like Les Mis is all singing, but it has that one song that people love. What's it called?
Well, that one has a couple songs.
Yeah, no, but there's the one big one.
Yeah, there's the one big one.
That people will sing
the one at the end.
Britain's Got Talent.
Oh, fuck, what is it called? I don't know. I'm not a music...
I Dreamed a Dream.
Oh, yes.
That's it.
Fuck, yeah. Okay, yeah, you're right, yeah. Look, I'm not a musical kid, so forgive me for my lack of deep knowledge. What I'm trying to get at here is that The Sound of Music outclasses so many of its sort of competitors in terms of just sheer number of bangers. You have How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria? You have The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music. You have
I'm 16 going on 17.
Yeah, you have Edelweiss. You have So Long Farewell. I don't know what that one's called.
A Spoonful of Sugar.
A Spoonful of Sugar.
My favourite things.
A few of my favourite things. Did I say Do Re Mi?
Nope.
I don't know. That's stupid. That's a stupid amount of songs.
Yeah, I really should. Who wrote the music for this musical?
I think it's Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Right, okay, because they did. I don't know what they were. I guess they just.
I think they are famous musical playwrights.
Right.
I've heard my sister.
Because it is kind of incredible, just like to get this many bangers on one thing, I bet from a musical perspective it's just massively impressive. Obviously I don't really have the knowledge on that to say if it is or isn't, but just like from a pure plebeian perspective, like it blows my mind that you could have this many, because they just seem like so fundamentally like catchy songs.
Oh yeah,
which is obviously why they've caught on so much, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, this film is as classic as it is. In the same way that, I don't know, the Beatles' Abbey Road is classic. You know, it's not just classic because it's iconic, but it's also because people love listening to what it has to offer. In the same way that like an action film is, you know, in part defined by how good its action is as well as its story.
Yeah.
The half of far more than half of the ingredient in a musical is its music. So it's already achieved stellar marks by my standards. And that's before you even get to the amazing chemistry and performances of Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that whole storyline. I guess this inadvertently is going to lead you to imply my sort of complaint with the film, but that first half of the film before the intermission is basically just awesome. It's,
right.
Like you, I'm not really a musical guy, so I don't hate musicals. I just like, I know some people love musicals, and I'm not one of those people, so I can be maybe a little bit more picky. But like that first section of her, like, you know, it's so sort of cutesy and
it is
and wholesome that it sounds so basic describing it, but it's literally like fish out of water story, goes to this place, two people gradually fall in love, and it just kind of does that basic stuff really, really well.
Yeah, which I guess is impressive in of itself, because without putting too much in the way of embellishments on it, they nail the core fundamentals, and
which is easier said than done as well.
I would argue it's harder to do that than to do it in such a bare bones representation of that kind of framework for a story, than if you had a lot of kind of clutter and sort of, you know, perhaps some like sort of more gimmicky aesthetics and things like that.
But their chemistry is sort of not to this extent, but it's similar to the Silence of the Lambs. It's the basics, right? Because it's like the chemistry of the two actors is great.
Yeah.
But it's also like well written, like it's funny. Obviously, it's all quite like affected, like, you know,
like theatrical.
Yeah, exactly. It's all quite sort of campy.
Yeah.
But not overly campy and annoying.
And it doesn't. There's not too much sort of nodding and winking
barely
at
any,
the audience. You know, it takes itself seriously within its story, which is great, because the backdrop for it, against like the sort of brewing war in Europe, does lend a level of sort of unspoken tension throughout much of the film until it becomes a prominent part of the storyline. And because it's, you know, a somewhat true story, that level of sincerity, I think, is not only beneficial but respectful as well.
I also thought that the children, who are obviously a very core element of the film, normally this would annoy me with almost any other film, but they're basically just there to be cute. But for some reason it kind of works. Yeah. Like, they're none of them, I think the film uses them much more scarcely than a less sensible film would. Right. I think a more kind of like whatever film would like just have loads of scenes with the kids, and there are loads of scenes with the kids, but I think crucially they don't actually talk that much.
Yes, they don't. And you know what's interesting is they're bar a couple of them, they are basically a single character.
Yeah.
Do you go like, oh, you've got
Gretel, that's the only one I remember.
Well, and you got the older one and the young one.
Oh, and I guess you got the girl who falls in love.
Yes. Yeah. So you got the I'm 16 going on 17 girl, because her story ties into the
Nazi stuff.
The Nazi stuff, and then you got the little girl who's just there to be the cute spokesperson on behalf of who is the first person to outwardly say I like you.
Yes.
So that's her importance in the whole thing. She's the most innocent and sort of unclouded by judgment.
Yeah.
They made a clever choice there by basically just characterizing them all as one kind of homogenous blob.
Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer rarely ever talk about a single child anyway either, so they are sort of treated as one character. Because they just talk about the kids, like the children. So
exactly that.
It managed to be charming without feeling like it was trying to be charming.
That's it.
Which I think is the reason why, because I did kind of go into this thinking like, am I going to be a bit grinchy on like this film?
I was intrigued to see your reaction to it as well, because if you didn't watch the previous episode, or at least if you didn't watch it to the end, this is one of the rare instances where we spun the wheel and I had seen a film that Rupert hadn't.
Yeah,
and
you know what's
crazy.
fucked?
What?
Is watching it, I'd definitely seen it.
Right, yeah. It's one of those films.
It's almost unavoidable.
Yeah. Like, even if you saw it, like, at age 3 and it was just on the telly and you have no ability to process those memories, but the songs are still so catchy, and, like, Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer is just so iconic that it still somehow buries its way into your mind.
I mean, maybe this is an obvious comparison, but it kind of reminded me of The Wizard of Oz, which is another one of those musicals that's just, like, so...
It's basically a folktale now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's I don't know. I don't think I know anybody who hasn't seen The Wizard of Oz.
Right. Yeah.
And possibly more people have seen that one just because that one is shorter.
Right.
And again, it has like a sort of similar catalogue of like really iconic songs.
Yeah. But I mean, I haven't showered enough praise on Julie Andrews in this film. I think Julie Andrews, like you were saying earlier, her role is essentially fish out of water, and because it's so plain and basic, it would be easy to not do the character service. But she kind of fills out so much without really having to do or say anything. She just has this kind of unspoken charisma, charm, and of course chemistry with Christopher Plummer, where there's a sincerity that she gives forward without really having to try. It's effortless.
She's just clearly like so effortlessly charismatic that I don't know how much direction they really gave her, because I mean probably a lot because she's dancing, but through a lot of the film. And I assume she's also probably singing, so she's. I don't.
It sounds
I'll be
like
real.
her voice.
I don't know a whole lot.
I'm pretty sure it's her.
I don't know a whole lot about Julie Andrews, but clearly she's like massively talented.
This is the kind of the pinnacle of Julie Andrews. I mean, we say we don't know much about Julie Andrews.
No,
She is crucially in Shrek 2.
And Aquaman.
And she is Cthulhu
yes.
in Aquaman. I'm sure for an older audience, she was just like the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And I would like to... I absolutely looking forward to delving more into her back catalogue, and I'm kind of shameful to admit that I basically have only seen this and the couple of things that she's been in my childhood.
You want to delve into Julie Andrews?
I want to delve into Julie Andrews. Fucking Jesus. Shut the fuck up.
So does Christopher Plummer, mate.
Oh, fucking oh, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. But, you know, he lived a happy life. But yeah, I mean...
You fucking child.
I think what's good is that her character could also equally be as sort of soppy and saccharine as the kids could have been,
right?
In that same way, where it's like she's just got a great heart and blah blah blah. But I think what kind of saves her character from being like that is that they cleverly write her to be like a bit of a troublemaker at first.
Yeah.
So she
has a little bit of edge to her.
Yeah, like because I think if she was just like if she was too wholesome, it would be too much, right? Yeah. So this film is obviously very sweet, but it's not like sickly sweet.
Yeah.
Like, I can still watch it and it's kind of fun. Yeah. It's not just like, happiness. Even though like if you listen to the songs, you'd be like, holy shit, this is like the cheesiest thing ever. The actual film itself
But you know
has
what's
a good
interesting?
balance.
The cheesiness of the songs is kind of tied into the storyline because they're used as a purpose. Like it's called The Sound of Music because the film is about their love of music as much as it is just simply a musical. And so her persistent cheeriness is carried through the music as a countermeasure to the children being scared at night of a thunderstorm, or like not wanting to take their medicine or something. Like she's trying to teach the kids how to live a better life, and then like through that she communicates on a far deeper level to Christopher Plummer's character than any woman has seemingly been able to communicate to him previously. So the saccharine sweetness is kind of built in, and then it's like the kind of remedy to obviously the Nazi stuff that comes through towards the end.
Well, I want to say before we go on to the Nazi stuff that I really, really liked Christopher Plummer's storyline with sort of him obviously becoming very into Julie Andrews' character, and
he's coming into Julie Andrews' character.
He is. Yeah, he's eventually you'd hope.
So, as you would hope with all healthy marriages.
Of course. As long as you're into that kind of thing, heterosexuality and all of that. But I liked their relationship as it built, and then how he's getting married to this woman, and how she sort of picks up on the fact that, oh, he really likes this one girl, and how it's never really made into this mega dramatic moment.
Right,
It's like, you don't love me.
That it could so easily be.
Yeah, and which it would really be more typical for like a film of this time, and a film, particularly a musical, right? Which everything is literally theatrical.
Yeah.
I appreciated the subtlety and the sort of realistic almost way that plays out, due to one of the characters being clearly quite emotionally mature and dealing with it in that way. It just made it feel a bit more real, and that whole thing is quite adult.
It's communed through like a sense of desperation rather than a sense of sort of melodrama.
Yeah.
Like the character, the new wife to be, encourages Maria to leave essentially and go back to the convent, but she knows when she's beaten.
Yeah.
She has that moment of like, I'm trying to claw at
It's
the
never
relationship,
like
but it's
a
much
beef.
and it's much more subtle. Yeah, she doesn't resent either of them for the feelings they have. She's just kind of, she has this vain hope that she can keep what she believes she has. But it's a very mature way of handling it as a character and as a writer, sculpting those characters. Briefly, I want to go back to, we were talking about how Maria has a certain sort of edge to her, and it reminds me of one of my favourite jokes in the film, which is right at the end, where the nuns are outside the convent, and they've all just run off, and they go to, "Mother, I have sinned." And they both pull out like two bits of the like the cars that the Nazis have been driving.
Yeah.
I like that her character has been rubbing off.
I guess a good callback. I mean, this kind of leads on to so with the second half of the film really like brings in like more of the like Nazi element, and then there's like historically, Austria is it has
engulfed.
Has been sort of, I forget what it was, like the Anschluss, where the Nazis are there. It's like, oh, we're all German now, and like this becomes this like whole feature of the film, and the family like basically plot their escape, but they're tied into this talent show. And to be honest, I found that whole segment of the film quite draggy.
Oh, really?
And not as engaging, where I feel like the tension should have been ramping up. Maybe it's just like that final musical show and all that. Like that joke you're talking about, it's funny, but it feels like a bit of a weird way to end the film. Like it feels like quite abrupt to me.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, like I think the first half of the film has a kind of more consistent pace to it. Like it really, I was really surprised how quickly it was gunning through a lot of the plot points. Like early on, it's like, the children don't like me, sing them a song. Children like me now. Yeah, and I was like, you know what? I kind of respect the efficiency of this. And like then it's about them building the relationship. And I think perhaps as part of trying to adhere to the history of the characters rather than sculpting the best story out of thin air, the second half is a bit more clunky. Not so much clunky as it is, there's a level of consistency in rhythm that the first half has that the second half doesn't. But I really like the sort of climax of the performance that they do, because Edelweiss, underrated song by all accounts in terms of its notoriety.
It's a good song, yeah.
But I thought there was the fact that it's performed by Christopher Plummer, who barely has sung in the film.
I think it's not the first time he sings, really.
Like on his own, for sure. Yeah. Where the first time we were talking about how there's so much sort of cheery music. That's the music becomes sort of really sincere and bleak at that point. But still kind of hopeful as well, because it's all about like how much he loves his country, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not that it's not super depressing.
It's not super depressing, but by comparison with what we've been shown before, it's no like Do Re Mi or Spoonful of Sugar.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So that as a climax, emotionally speaking, works for me, and then I really enjoy the quiet tension of your kind of the final act of them like running through like the convent. And
yeah, I mean,
I always enjoyed that. I kind of liked the sort of darkness, the reality that we.
I don't dislike it. I still enjoy it, and I like that confrontation with Christopher Plummer and him. The boy was going to probably end up dating his daughter or whatever, and I liked his character being reintroduced. I like how you have that sort of really sweet set up with them.
Yes.
He's like, I'm gonna, and he comes back and it's like, oh fuck, he's a Nazi.
That's like, so good, actually. That's fucking.
I think
excellent.
I like that, and I like that the film sort of introduces the element, I guess it's so core to the story you couldn't not introduce it.
Yeah.
But watching the first half of the film, you could just be like, oh right, that's the film, right? It could go in any direction before
that's true.
the intermission.
To be honest, you could, it could, kind of.
So I like that the Nazi stuff sort of comes in almost exclusively in the intermission, but I like that it adds like a level of actual darkness to the otherwise very sweet and unassuming first half. I just didn't care for the film as much in the second half, and I found my mind wandering at points. And, it wasn't bad. I guess also there weren't as many catchy songs in the second half.
They front load the album.
Yes, exactly. They front load it. So I wonder if did the film need to be in 2 parts, or that's just my preference. But yeah.
I understand that. Yeah, I can appreciate that. But it's ironic because, knowing you and knowing the gloomy heart that resides in your chest, I would have expected you to be like, oh, I was all about the moody Nazi stuff. But first half where they were singing about how they liked, apple strudel and shit, like, nah, I wasn't all about that.
Yeah. No, bring back the songs about kittens. That was was my jam. Yeah. So what would you rate it?
I'd give this a solid 8 out of 10. I thought this was really, it earns its classic status. It's got 2 absolutely iconic performances.
For sure.
Some of the best chemistry. We haven't really talked enough about Christopher Plummer in this, but I would just say that it's rare that I've seen a chemistry between 2 romantic leads that is so compelling, so real as this. Like the fact that they aren't married in real life is kind of crazy to me, you know what I mean? That's the kind of genuineness. What's the word?
No, you mean genuineness, I think is a word.
There's a proper word for it and I can't think of it. That as a core of the film is amazing. Music's amazing. So yeah, 8 out of 10. What about you?
It's a 7 for me, but I pretty much echo everything you say. I guess I just don't like the second half as much as I like the first half. Okay. Which also I feel like always gives you a slightly more negative spin.
Yeah, because if the film ends like weaker there, yeah.
But I still really liked it. I'd gladly watch it again. I know all of the songs, obviously. So yeah, 7 out of 10, and I would certainly not dispute its classic status either. Yeah, excellent. We'll have a little peruse through what it was up against in the year 1965. So, in the 38th Academy Awards for Best Picture, you had The Sound of Music, which won. You had Darling by Joseph Janney. No idea. Dr. Zhivago, which I need to see, and I'm surprised hasn't won Best Picture, to be fair. That is a classic. Again, I've not seen it. You had Ship of Fools by Stanley Kramer, who is a good director. Okay. And 1,000 Clowns. Okay. So, I couldn't tell you if it deserved its nomination because I've only seen this one film. Okay, fair enough. Are there any other big ones that came out that year? Thunderball? No. If Bond was ever going to get nominated, it would not be for Thunderball. Repulsion is a good film, but that's Roman Polanski's early horror film. Oh, really? Okay. Again, one horror, of them, but that's okay. For a few dollars more, that's a great film. Great film. Genre, but yeah, fantastic would never have won an Oscar, that's for sure. Yeah. Oh yeah, because spaghetti westerns were really lambasted at the time, though. Yes. So nothing that notable. So really, it does come down to a question between. I don't think I've seen enough films. No, Sound of Music and Dr. Zhivago are the 2 big names there, and we can only. Well, Dr. Zhivago isn't seen as like an untouchable classic either. No. So it's just known for being fucking long. So I guess a potentially even grudge match. I guess that would be a question I would pose to people in the comments is, given our sort of... part of this series is to acquaint ourselves with past eras of film that we're not as familiar with. But for those of you that are more familiar, let us know down in the comments what you would have chosen as your winner. Do you think that The Sound of Music is a worthy winner in 1965 or 6? Yeah, if you've got any 65 film recs outside of Repulsion, there are a few films from 65 I saw there that I do want to see, like Perrault Le Fou, which is a Jean-Luc Godard film. I don't know how you say it because I don't speak French. And Chimes of Midnight, which is an Orson Welles film. Oh, yes, I want to see that. So there's like a bunch of stuff that I haven't seen, obviously. Right. So yeah, if you've got any 65 film recs,
Yeah.
hit us up.
Absolutely, yeah. And as with, Silence of the Lambs, let us know down in the comments what you think about both these films, and indeed whether you think they were worthy of their wins. So that leads us on to
The wheel.
picking our next 2 films for next time. If you have been with us thus far, thank you very much for watching. Do consider subscribing to the channel, liking, and all that good stuff, commenting as well. And if you dislike the video, give it a dislike. But before we go, it's time to do a little spin.
I believe you spun it last time.
Okay, yeah, well, we're doing 1 spin each.
Okay, first one, spin. Doesn't make a noise. We are watching Ordinary People.
Okay, and The Sting.
Ah, The Sting. That's on Netflix, so that makes my life easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we are. Our next films will be The Sting and Ordinary People. So if you are interested in checking that out, please consider subscribing to the channel so that you are notified when that video comes out. Thank you very much from the both of us. We will catch you again next time. Peace.
Peace.